Welcome to Mastering Fundraising, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. Mastering fundraising endeavors to cover the most important fundraising topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as fundraisers. This podcast will share stories, tips, and guidance on the most important elements of fundraising. If you want to earn an advanced degree in fundraising, this is the podcast for you. Mastering Fundraising is a collaboration between Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership and the 5-Tool Fundraiser, two leaders in providing relevant and expert content to fundraisers and nonprofit leaders. Without further delay, let's jump into the current episode. Please join me in welcoming your host for today, Chris Looney.
Welcome to Mastering Fundraising, a show that interviews the world's top fundraisers to explore the most important fundraising topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as fundraisers. My name is Chris Looney, and I have the good fortune to be your host for this deep dive into fundraising. Today on the Mastering Fundraising podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Duane Rohrbacher, Executive Director of Development at UC Irvine, with extensive experience leading development operations in a major university setting. Duane has been at the forefront of integrating innovative technologies, including artificial intelligence, to streamline fundraising processes, enhance donor engagement, drive philanthropic impact, and so much more. And in this conversation, we'll dive into how AI is really transforming fundraising operations, what fundraisers need to know to leverage AI effectively, and the practical steps to adopt AI tools without losing the personal touch that makes really philanthropy so meaningful. So thank you, Duane, for joining me today.
Great to be here, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you bet. And we are looking forward to learning from you and taking advantage of your significant expertise. So let's dive in. And as is typical with our podcast, we need to get to know you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your leadership journey in the nonprofit space?
Sure. Yeah. I, like most fundraisers, since none of us have bachelor's or master's degree in fundraising, have a circuitous path. Started as a student affairs professional, actually. Out of graduate school, I earned a PhD in higher education administration, law degree from Penn State University. Came into student affairs after I realized the professor lifestyle wasn't for me, and being a lawyer also wasn't for me, so I didn't have a lot of options. Started as a relatively high-level student affairs administrator at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Stayed in student affairs for a few years, met my wife, and then kind of meandered into fundraising through alumni relations, actually. So I was a sort of student affairs, and then kind of career services, and then alumni, and then fundraising. And I've been at UC Irvine for the last little over 6 years. And in that time, went from an associate director of development and alumni relations. Now I'm an executive director of development. So it's been a fun journey. And in that time, I've had the great opportunity to be part of a large campaign, a $2 billion campaign, which we successfully completed a couple of months ago. And so now I'm excited to dive into the next phase, which is between campaign, where you can do a lot of experimenting. And I've been an active AI user ever since ChatGPT came out in, I think it was September of 2022. I'm always looking to make my life easier, to do things more efficiently and effectively. And so, here we are.
Here we are, yeah. Well, over the years, with all of the different roles, especially some really strong, important leadership roles, what's been your favorite so far?
This is my favorite role, definitely. And I know you're supposed to say that, but this is also true. So because I primarily support education initiatives at UCI, so oversee the School of Education, Division of Continuing Education, a few other areas, and I have a PhD in education, it really kind of blends my kind of academic desires and academic insight into sort of fundraising so I can, and you know how important this is, I can speak the language to the stakeholders and at a very high level, I can translate a lot of what the faculty members are saying to a donor in a very simple way. So I feel like I'm at an advantage because I have such a strong academic background in what I'm fundraising for.
Yeah.
And it really allows me to talk both directions in a very easy, holistic way.
Yeah, no, that's great. I totally get it. And it reminded me when you were talking about how unique fundraising is in that you might have an interest in fundraising or a passion or a strength in fundraising, but then you can marry it with an area of nonprofit that you're particularly passionate about as well, whether it's animals or it's education or it's healthcare. So
Absolutely.
it's really a unique role to be a fundraiser and an important one at that. I'm sure that there have been some folks along the way, along your leadership journey that have helped, that have supported, that have given you great advice. Who do you kind of point to when you think about the important mentors in your professional life?
Yeah. Yeah, I think my first fundraising supervisor was also probably the most important mentor because he gave me a fundraising job with, as many people do, with almost no fundraising experience.
Right.
And his name was John DeMichael. He lives in San Diego. He's the vice president at the institution I was working at the time. And he just challenged me every day. He's like, well, do you want to do this? Annual giving, because I had primarily an alumni role. He's like, oh, you're probably a good writer because you have a PhD. Do you want to do some foundation work, some grant work? And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, well, and people seem to like you. What about some corporate work? So he just kept like piling it on, and along the way was just instrumental and I learned everything from him. I mean, all of the facets. So I have such a broad base of fundraising background. I've done the whole spectrum of fundraising and partly because of him, because he gave me the opportunity to do that. We were working for a really small institution at the time. And so it was just the two of us. So I kind of had to do everything
Yeah,
also.
love
But it
that.
was really one of those things where if I had a question, I was like, I have no idea how to ask somebody for $100,000. He would take the time and sit with me and we talk about, it's not your money, so you can ask them for $100,000.
But yeah,
And, a lot of the
all the
basic things that
lessons.
we learn when we go to conferences and things like that. I learned on the ground from somebody who, had been doing it for 35, 40 years.
That's great. Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. It's so important to have people like that who will test your interest, give you a shot, help let you explore some of those things. Eh, It's interesting, and it's off script a little bit, but it really seems important for me to help the audience understand if they don't that there are a lot of fundraisers that really chase after the jobs in a sort of more sophisticated, large shop that have lots of resources, maybe that do the fundamentals really well. And that's great. That's so important. But it's also interesting that you're not going to learn maybe as much as you might if you're the only other person in a fundraising operation where you have to do everything.
100%.
Right. So it's interesting to look at people with both experiences and try to figure out, well, what was better for them in their career. I mean, I think with your role, you probably at least had an opportunity to really understand what you wanted to pursue, what you were maybe
Exactly.
good at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I also got to understand sort of the career paths associated with all of those jobs, right? There's so many different avenues you can go in fundraising. And, I think the sexiest one's always major gifts. Everybody wants to do major gifts,
Right.
but there's so many paths that you can take that are just as rewarding, that can be intellectual, that can push you. And I think, having the opportunity to go down kind of all the paths simultaneously really positioned me to be able to come into a place like UC Irvine, which is what you're describing, a huge, sophisticated place, and kind of figure out what lane I wanted to go in, and then go hard and fast too. So because I wasn't meandering anymore, because I kind of knew what I wanted to do pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's fun to be able to talk to someone who's been in a lot of different roles, but then has also really focused on operations to some degree as well, because that is not the area that most people think about externally when they think about fundraising. They think
Sure.
about the sort of frontline fundraiser that goes out and asks for gifts and is sort of maybe even a rainmaker in their mind, which is such a funny kind of concept in many ways, but it's such an external one. And then you think about, well, if you really want to talk about the important work that happens in fundraising, it's the blocking and tackling that happens behind the scenes, the, you know, the long chain of events that has to happen from the time that a gift is actually received by someone or in the mail, and then follow that through all the way to the point where the donor feels like they're stewarded well and appreciated, and all of the things in between. Nobody has any idea how complicated, sophisticated, and how many steps are involved. So pretty
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so in the years that you've spent developing your leadership in the space, in fundraising and in the nonprofit world, how would you describe your own philosophy? How do you describe your own sort of leadership in the nonprofit space?
Yeah. I think in fundraising especially, there's a lot of flexibility, because there has to be, right? We have to go to events all the time. Events are mostly in the evenings, on the weekends. We have to cater to other people's schedules. So if somebody wants to get breakfast at 7 a.m., probably going to get breakfast with them at 7 a.m., right?
So true.
They want to get dinner at 8 p.m., you're probably going to get dinner at 8 p.m. So there's a lot of flexibility. Yeah. But with that flexibility comes a lot of excuses. It's really easy to say, oh, I don't have enough time to do X because I'm working on Y. So for me, I think the biggest part of the leadership journey is really owning flexibility and accountability at the same time. And that's a hard marriage to have, especially now, since I think most fundraising roles are very hybrid. And I think in the past, most fundraising roles were hybrid just because of the nature of travel and things like that. But now they're really hybrid where, I mean, I'm hybrid, right? I go in maybe 2 or 3 days a week at most, and managing a distributed team and really holding people accountable while giving them flexibility, I think is just those two things: is always providing flexibility because people want it and they crave it, but then holding them accountable through that flexibility, I think, is the hardest and most rewarding thing, because you really see the levers being pulled constantly. Oh, I can't talk to this person because we have this event this week, right? Or, right, it's just balancing the sort of project management aspect of fundraising. And you kind of hit on it earlier. I think of fundraising operations and project management kind of go hand in hand, and being a very high level project manager is going to make you a very high level fundraiser. I mean, you can kind of teach someone how to talk to somebody. I think it's a lot harder to teach people how to have self-discipline and how to manage their time and how to manage their projects. So I really like helping people figure out the spaces that they can be the best, most disciplined fundraiser, because at the end of the day, there's so many donors. They take a lot of time to cultivate and steward. And there's so many events, which take a lot of time to organize and execute. So how can you project manage your way to a successful year over year? And so that's kind of where I see my leadership journey, as being sort of that enabler of high level project management, which is pretty much fundraising operations.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I made the note, the balancing of flexibility with accountability. It's such a critical element to the work in nonprofit. And thank you for bringing that forward. And now we get to jump into the main focus of today's conversation. That was important, but the main focus is all about AI and fundraising operations. And I know we're only going to scratch the surface, but we're going to try to scratch hard and see what we can come up with. So we start with a little bit around foundations and context. Can you, Duane, start by sharing your perspective on how AI is currently being used in fundraising operations? And it's okay to focus on how you're using it in higher education specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think when I talk to people who are using it, I think most people are using it for fun, right? And all the things that we're seeing on the internet right now, like Grok is coming out with Grok Imagine, and it's all about creating videos from old pictures. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people are using it for more sort of entertainment purposes, and they don't see sort of the value in training it at a high level to be you, to take you to the next level, right?
Good.
And I think, and I know we're going to get into the ethics of it later, but one of the biggest issues with any new technology is the most capable and most intelligent people use it in the most sophisticated way, which gets them ahead. And then everybody else uses it in the most casual way, which puts them behind. So I think we're going to see and continue to see a divide where the people who are embracing it are going to be able to, I don't know, 2x, 80% more their output. And the people who aren't are going to be asked why they're not producing at the way that the people who are using it in a very effective way are.
Yes.
So the space is really interesting because you really only have four main products, in my opinion. DeepSeek, and I'll just go into an overview of like sort of the space. So everybody knows about ChatGPT mostly because they have the best marketing. I think Grok is, which is based out of Twitter, is kind of the next big one. And then if you're not an iPhone user, Google Gemini is a huge one for Android users, and it's pretty sophisticated. And then you have Claude. And Claude is sort of a spin-off of ChatGPT, essentially, used more for coding and things like that.
Okay.
And then you have all these like ancillary ones that are built off of the main four, right? DeepSeek was built off of ChatGPT. And then there's a bunch of kind of nuanced ones that just use like Perplexity basically uses these four together.
Okay.
But those are the main four, and they all have the same sort of algorithmic way. They just predict the next word, right? That's how it works essentially. And I think what we're seeing is the four started the same, meaning they all wanted to be authors and editors and financial analysts. But now you're seeing a huge change where Claude is focusing almost exclusive on coding and computer programming. They're really trying to replace entry-level programmers. And the reason for this is really financial, right? None of these things really make a lot of money right now, but they're super, super expensive to run because of the GPU cards and the electricity that's required to use them. So they have to figure out how to have enterprise level products. So they're all kind of trying to differentiate themselves in the enterprise space. So Claude is coding, Grok is sort of video, audio editing, ChatGPT is maybe writing. I think a lot of students use it. I think a lot of professors use it. So you're seeing that in sort of the writing space. And then Gemini is they have the most resources because Google. And I see them as really the ones that are taking their time and really trying to figure out what they can do in the space to differentiate themselves.
Okay.
So for me, I use all of them because
Interesting.
they're all can be used for different reasons. Some of them I use on the free subscription. I pay a little bit for some of them. And the reason for that is because they all have different strengths, which I kind of just described here. So if I want to write an email, which I don't know if you saw, there was a study that came out maybe 6 months ago that 30 or 40% of fundraisers' time is writing emails,
Right.
which is insane.
Makes
So if I want to write an email, I'm going to use ChatGPT. Why am I going to use ChatGPT? Because I spent the last 3 years, and you don't have to spend 3 years. I spent the last 3 years teaching ChatGPT how to write like I do, how to respond like I do. Like I always say, for example, good afternoon, comma, Chris, period. Like I always say that. And so ChatGPT now, if I'm having it write something for me, will say good afternoon, comma, Chris, period.
Right.
A lot of people recognize the M dash. Are you familiar with the M dash, the long one? So ChatGPT uses the M dash all the time. And it's like nobody uses it normally because you have to press the dash twice. And nobody does that like normally when they're writing. It's the longer dash. And ChatGPT uses it all the time. So people are starting to pick up of, oh, if you have an M dash, that means you wrote this through AI. And like, I don't want to read it if it's written
Oh,
through
wow.
AI,
Okay.
as an example.
Okay.
So I told it never use an M dash
Never
because
use it.
I don't want anybody to think that I'm using it, right?
And you can write
So
that into the query, if you will. Just you could just say, "Hey, don't ever use this when you're writing
so it
something."
actually has a memory. So you can create memories with it if you have the paid subscription, and it's $20 a month. So I have a paid subscription to ChatGPT because I want to use the memory because I always wanted to remember how I work. So ChatGPT, really good for writing. If I'm going to write like a stewardship report or an email or whatever, I'm probably going to go to
Right.
ChatGPT first.
Right.
And ChatGPT is really good for first drafts and it's really good for editing, but you're not going to get the best content out of it in the history of the world. So throw it a couple of bullet points, rewrite it yourself, and then have it edit it. Good to go. And if I'm
Just
using,
I'll pause right there real quick because you said
yeah,
stewardship reports, emails. Um, I love when you're drawing out the specific uses. So they're
hmm
probably, maybe proposals, maybe
yeah, proposals is another great one.
yeah.
Anything that's heavy writing,
Yep.
like so, yeah, donor proposals, stewardship reports,
An
emails,
article for a newsletter on planned
yeah,
giving.
article for exactly. Working with your marketing department, all of our marketing departments are overloaded because they have to do external marketing and then they have to do fundraising marketing, giving them first drafts of marketing emails, stuff like that is really helpful.
Great.
So anything that's like writing intensive.
Great.
And does it save time? 100%, right? How
Sure.
long does it, if you were to sit down from scratch right now and write a stewardship report for a $500,000 endowment donor, how long would it take you? Hours?
Sure.
Many hours,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You have it do a first draft for you, takes 20 seconds. You spend an hour editing it, making it sound like you, making sure all the facts and figures are correct. You give it back to it for editing. It edits all of your terrible grammar problems. And then you're done. And it took an hour instead of 5 hours. So you just saved 80% of your time. And then on the reporting side of the house, if I'm looking at any sort of donor data, first you have to anonymize it, right? You don't want to give all your donors information to one of these products because then somebody else is going to type in, well, Chris Looney, how much how much could he give? And then it's going to be like, oh, I know exactly how much he could give, right?
Right.
So
It's
you put in a
important. I mean,
prompt.
so that's so critically important just to
Yeah.
put that warning out there.
Yeah, yeah. And I think most organizations are, if they don't have them yet, they're going to have AI usage policies
Right.
that say you can't upload our, it's August 13th right now. So a lot of people are looking at, okay, what are my live bunts? Who am I renewing this year? A lot of people are going to say you can't put the full report into an AI and have it spit it back to you.
Even if you
So what
have a
you can,
paid subscription and theoretically it's your, information.
yeah, no, because it's not. So what you can do though, because it's really good at writing like Excel queries, is you can say, write a query to anonymize this. You write it and anonymizes it, then you upload it because it's anonymous and now you're good to go. So if I'm going to do data analytics, so right now, for example, I'm writing sort of a year-end report that's like donor elevation, donor retention, live bunts recovered, side bunts recovered, all the things that you want to hear about. And it would take me forever to figure out all the Excel formulas and all of that. So I
Sure.
anonymize it, throw it in, spits it back out to me. And now I can write my report. So it also works for internal reports, right?
Okay.
So you have to write a report to your boss of why did we go from 400 donors last year to 380? ChatGPT is going to help you write that report a lot faster. And it's going to probably be more convincing than what you're going to say, which is I spent too much time doing events.
Yeah. And
So
ChatGPT.
if I'm going to do data analytics, I'm going to go to Claude because Claude's really built for computer programming, and computer programming is data heavy. So if I'm going to throw an Excel sheet in there, I'll go Claude, and I also pay for Claude. I spent a couple bucks on, and it's $20 for both of them, so it's $40 a month.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of organizations are getting to the point where they're thinking about starting to pay for them for their employees just because the ROI is so high. So I'll go Claude first, have it do a data analysis, and then I'll take the analysis and I'll put it into ChatGPT and have it write a report for it. And the reason for that is because they have different strengths, right? Claude is okay at writing. Okay. You'd probably sound like an eighth grader, which I think a lot of us sound like eighth graders when we write, probably. But ChatGPT, you can tell it, like, I'm writing this for the CEO of a nonprofit, or I'm writing this for the director of development. It's going to level set how you write to that person based on the prompt that you give it.
Amazing.
So I think, one big thing that's important is to figure out your prompts. And I did a whole presentation at the AFPOC conference back in Association of Fundraising Professionals in Orange County, for those who are not local, in March, where I gave everybody who came to my talk, I think it was like 100 prompts that they can use in various stages of the fundraising cycle. So I gave them identification prompts, cultivation prompts, solicitation prompts, stewardship prompts, grant writing prompts, corporate application prompts, like pretty much everything.
Amazing. Yeah.
And you'll figure that out as you go along if you're new to this. And there's tons of resources online. You could type in, what's the best prompts that I can use for cultivation of donors in Southern California, right? You're going to get something from that. Or you can just ask. You can make it so in law school, they do a type of learning called the Socratic method. So the Socratic method is, I basically ask you a question and then you answer it. And instead of me giving you the answer, I ask you another question to try to get you to come up with the answer on your own. So I kind of talk to the LLMs using the Socratic method. So we have this back and forth, like, I need to figure out how to tell you what I want. How do I do that? And then it'll tell you, and then you can just go back and forth with it until eventually you get to sort of exactly what you're looking for. Since I've been using it for so long, I don't really have to worry about prompts anymore. But if you were new to the space, I would highly recommend starting the conversation with the LLM that you choose to use by figuring out how to talk to it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you used Google in 2004, right? Chris, you did? You remember when you were in Google, if you typed in Chris Looney, it would come up with like 500 different people. But if you typed in quotations Chris plus quotations Looney plus quotation Orange County, it would come up with you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. That's where we are right now. We're kind of at this early stage where you have to figure out how to talk to it just as much as you have to figure out how to use it.
And at this point, are you just verbally talking to these AI services, or are you typing? I mean, I just
both.
You're doing both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do both. It depends. Like if I'm in the car and I have an idea, I'll talk to it. But I type a lot to it. I think sometimes, and the voice, the way it interacts with you when you're talking is slightly different too. So when you talk to it, it talks to you like it's a person. So it'll pause and it'll say, and it'll kind of meander a little bit.
That's hilarious.
So it's a little more personal, and it doesn't give you sort of the depth of content that you're looking for when you're talking to it. But the easiest way around that, instead of talking to it, is use your little microphone button. So you can dictate to it, but it'll type back to you.
Okay.
So then you don't have to like physically type everything out. But the speaking part of it is more for, I don't know, say you sprained your ankle and you want to figure out what you're supposed to do, right? That's like a better use case for it than, trying to write a sophisticated stewardship report for one of your largest donors.
Yeah, I hear you. No, that's why I asked, for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So we covered ChatGPT, right? Or maybe even Claude.
Yeah.
But there are others that you might use for your operations purposes.
Sure. Yeah. So Grok, well, I don't know if I'd use Grok anymore, actually.
Yeah. I mean,
They've really pivoted. I mean, they change it a lot. Like they change Grok specifically a lot. It changes all the time. And it really seems like, and it's owned by Elon Musk. So, that comes with a lot of interesting things in and of itself. But it's really being used for, I would say, entertainment mostly. So I don't really, and it also talks to you in kind of a mean way. Not that that matters, but it's just a different I would just put it over here.
Right.
It's not a heavy work thing.
I've never
The
used
reason
it.
I don't,
So.
yeah, the reason I don't use Google Gemini is because I'm not an Android user, and I think it's really integrated into like the Android ecosystem. So it's like built into Android phones,
Yeah.
like Samsung Galaxy, all of those things. I've heard good things about it, but I also don't know if you need to use three of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm only using one, ChatGPT,
Yeah,
but
you're using ChatGPT.
my uses are not as expansive as yours, and I don't do a lot of analytics, right? Which I think
Yeah.
is a great recommendation that I'm hearing from you in terms of some of these analyses of donor data, prospect
Hmm.
information, whatever it might be, to use Claude, which is a great recommendation. Um, and
Yeah, of
and of course, I think there are a lot of people that are only going to maybe have the bandwidth to
course.
go with one kind of provider and get familiar
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
And then,
Is there AI use for you in operations outside of these kind of pro providers? Is there other ways that people use AI?
yeah, I mean, have you ever heard of Grammarly?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Grammarly is a fantastic tool because it just fixes all of your grammar, right? I mean, that's technically an AI and it's built for a very specific use case. It's
Got
built
it.
for editing
That's helpful to
only.
know. Yeah.
You can put it right on your computer. You can have it in your browser. It's very, very helpful. I always use Grammarly because you always, I think a lot of times we get a little lazy or we get a little casual. And I have like Grammarly on the sort of formal, concise mode,
Yep.
essentially. So Grammarly is always my last resort. Anytime before I press send, Grammarly gets it first, for sure. Um, there's a lot of tools and kind of where we're going in this space. I think there's a chance that annual giving could really look a lot different in the next 3 to 5 years. Because if you think about what it is, it's a high volume, low touch space, which is perfect for an LLM, right? High volume, low touch. So I think if you're thinking about renewing a $50 donor, you're thinking about, I'm sending out a mailer or something like that. I think there's going to be services popping up, and there's a few right now, and I haven't looked too much into them that are going to do it for you're just going to pay them a flat fee every year and they're going to do all your annual giving exactly how you need it to be done.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't want the audience to be limited in terms of thinking that this is all for print or all for email. We could be talking
Oh,
about
we talk about everything.
the text
Yeah.
capabilities using AI. We could be even getting to the point where it's a phone call
Yeah.
coming from AI that
Oh
is
yeah.
distinguishable from a human on the other phone, right? So if
Yeah,
someone does pick up, they feel like they're talking to a human being.
for sure. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of sort of telephone outreach programs move to that space. So the service that I'm thinking of, which I can't remember the name, that- that's exactly what they do. They guarantee, 5 touch points, all phone calls, they leave voicemails, they send emails, they respond to emails. They do all of it. And then if they're qualified to make a gift, then they ship them to you. I think that's going to be sort of the space that we see things go in. But yeah, I write agendas for meetings with it. If I
Yeah.
have an internal meeting with my team and I have 5 things, just put it in the agenda. And that's the other thing that's nice about it is with the memory feature, when you pay for it, you can put templates in it, right? So I have a meeting agenda template. I have our annual report, which is public in it. If I were a nonprofit, I'd put my own 990 in it potentially. I'd put an annual report in it. Any sort of templates you have for, a lot of people have very specific ways they invite people to events, for example.
Right.
They have specific ways that they, you know, greet donors, etc. Put as many templates as you can in it, and then tell it to remember to use it, and then it will say memory updated. That's like the key. When it says memory updated, you're good to go. And now all of a sudden, it's really a tool that you can use that really maximizes you as an individual. So, say I'm a $1 million nonprofit and I have 2 people. Well, now I can have 5 people, sort of, right? Because before I didn't have time to do stewardship in the way that I needed to do it to really elevate donors from here to there because I have to spend so much time on all the administrative stuff. Well, now all of a sudden I have a stewardship report writer on my team, right? I don't have time to do really sophisticated annual giving because, 20 bucks, 50 bucks, like there's just so many people that give at that level. Well, now I have an annual giving partner on my team. So I
Okay.
think you're going to see a lot of, especially smaller shops, look towards these tools on how to leverage them and maximize them. And what I also think you're going to see is hopefully leadership at nonprofits, at universities saying, you're a fundraiser, you no longer have to come to these sort of like internal meetings with finance and operations and all of these things because I need you to do 3 jobs using AI, right? So, and we got to prepare for it as a field. And I think if you're not using it and you don't understand how to use it, you're going to get left behind because how many consulting firms are there? How many ed tech startups are there that are going to be using these tools, that are going to be selling these tools? If you're say you're a $5 million nonprofit and you can spend $75,000 on an annual giving person with benefits and everything, or you can spend $40,000 on a piece of software that gets you 80% of what the person would, what are you going to do?
Yeah, right. Right. And the $40,000 piece of software improves exponentially every year,
Yeah.
and maybe the individual doesn't improve so dramatically. They can get
Yeah.
better, but the
Well, and
result.
if you think about an entry level person, and this is why a lot of these companies like Microsoft and Salesforce are kind of laying off a lot of people, or they say they are. What's the turnover in entry level fundraising job? It's super high. I mean, if you get 2 years out of that person,
Yeah,
you're lucky.
it's easy to be judgmental. Like you said that, and I was like, oh, that's such a terrible choice. You're choosing a human being versus technology, right? And
Sure.
technology is going to win. But then you have to think about it a little bit more, and the reality is that it's true. These big tech firms are, in fact, not hiring the same number of analysts because they are able to incorporate AI to do those functions, right?
Hmm.
So it just makes sense that it's also going to impact some of those entry level jobs in fundraising as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if and but then you're going to have that gap, right? Which is kind of what I said at the beginning, where the experts and the highly intellectual people are going to use it and they're going to get much better off.
Yeah,
And then the people who don't use it are going to be over here. So you're going to have the missing middle and we have that right now in the field anyway. But it's going to be hard to figure out how to bring in a junior person, train them to elevate to a mid-level manager or senior leadership when you have this tool that you need right now that is going to have no turnover. It's going to get better every year, like you said. There's going to be sort of a paradigm shift in sort of like what jobs are available for people and how we train people to be elevated in those jobs. And it's something that it shouldn't be scary to anybody because we used to have 7 librarians because they had to walk around and get the card and figure out where the book was. And then they had a computer. So you only needed 4 librarians, right? So it's that sort of shift that we're going to see in the nonprofit space, especially with I'll call it low touch, high volume sort of jobs.
right, right. And you said that a few times, the low touch, high volume jobs. And there's a lot of that in fundraising.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of those types of applications, whether it's crowdfunding. I mean, I just gave
Yeah.
to my daughter's flag football booster campaign, and I made a small gift because I wanted to participate,
Hmm.
even though I know that there are more efficient ways to give larger dollars
Hmm.
more directly, right? So anyway, the point is that that was a super automated process.
Yep.
And it didn't even require my daughter to sit down at a computer and type out an email. She just put in my email address, and next thing you know, it comes into my inbox, right?
Yeah.
And so there are lots of ways. But let's talk about that concern
Hmm.
that is so common about how AI could depersonalize, could jeopardize donor relationships. And so I'd love a recommendation from you how fundraisers balance automation with authentic, personalized engagement. What's the answer?
Yeah. Meet people in person.
Right, right.
Yeah. I mean, I almost never have a Zoom meeting with a donor anymore unless I absolutely have to because they're far away or, schedules or whatever. I think the value of in-person touch is just going to increase over time and things like that. Um, I don't know. I actually think it's going to be more personalized, actually. I think AI is going to create more hyper personalization, actually. So,
That's
do you
good.
ever do you ever shop at Nordstrom?
Of
Yeah,
course.
right. Of course.
Well,
Okay.
I think there's not a thing that I'm wearing right now that probably didn't come from Nordstrom.
For
And
everybody who doesn't know, Nordstrom is a nice department store. Nordstrom also sends 14,000 emails a day, but they know everything about you. They know exactly what you want. They know your style. They know probably how much money you make approximately, right? They know everything about you. And I think that's where we're going. And, nonprofits are always behind, right? So a for-profit organization, but that sells something
right,
is always going to invest in that before a nonprofit. But we're close. We're close to it knowing that your daughter is in a flag football team and it's going to talk to you in a way that a volunteer who writes you an email about donating to a booster is not going to be able to match. So I think it's actually going to increase personalization there. But like I said, that's sort of on the crowdfunding, annual giving, phone-a-thon side. On the major gift side, we got to meet people in person. And when you prepare to meet somebody in person, you have to pay attention to them and listen to them and understand them and really, because I think there's going to be a pretty big shift where people are going to say, I don't have enough time to meet with my 180 people in my portfolio. So I'm going to sort of mail it in with AI, right? And donors are going to recognize that. Whereas the person who knows their kids' names, who knows that they went on vacation last week or whatever, right? Who like knows them as an individual are going to get more and more brownie points. And if you think about how people give, right? People always give to, there's the top three idea, and then they give sort of smaller gifts to a lot of organizations. There's going to be a point where you're going to see people who are giving to the high touch places, even if they have more affinity towards the low touch places because they want to talk to a person.
yeah,
Because as you get robocalled more, as you get all these personalized AI emails more, as everything becomes more robotic, the in-person in high touch is going to be more valuable than ever before.
yeah, good. I'm glad you said that. I think it's an important point for people to hear. This does not replace, this does not minimize the need for traditional engagement and human touch. I think it
Yeah.
just helps everyone make those touches stronger by virtue of
Yes.
the fundraiser having more meaningful information at their disposal. I remember a
Exactly.
boss of mine 25 years ago asking me questions about myself and then putting notes in his phone, right? And 25 years ago, it probably wasn't even his phone. It was probably writing it down. I can't remember, but I was struck by the fact that like, oh, this person really cares and is writing this down, and who knows
Yeah.
where it goes. But today, you can just speak those points into your phone, your chat GPT or whatever, and
Yeah.
build that donor file for
Mhm.
that person and receive those automatic reminders. Hey, it's so and so's son's birthday, so you might want to send him a congratulatory note or just thinking about you, whatever. So
Exactly. And that's why it's going to get more personalized. Exactly. We're going to get, I mean, we're not that far away from the point where you're going to have say you're a donor and I'm the fundraiser. I'm going to meet with you after this. I'm going to sit here on my phone, dictate to it for 10 minutes. This
good.
is what we talked about. And then It's going to put reminders on my calendar. It's going to pre-draft an email thank you. It's going to pre-draft a solicit. I mean, it's going to do everything for you,
Right.
which is going to make it more personalized because
Right.
I just sat and talked to you and I told it everything about you.
And you're
Put it
going to
into
build out
CRM.
that framework for AI to populate or auto remind or whatever it is to fill in that framework, because you've taught it how to help you be more successful. And so you just need to be able to sit there for those 10 minutes and regurgitate what you learned, and which is a skill that a lot of people have to develop as well, right?
Exactly. That's when so I think
My wife asked me,
listening...
how'd it go? And I was like, it was good, right? Like, you're not going to give me
So I
more.
think active listening is going to be more important than ever, because if I'm active listening and then I'm regurgitating everything, and now all of a sudden, again, project management, what I said at the beginning, that's the biggest benefit. I just project managed you as a donor. So I have everything on a schedule. I have everything hyper personalized, probably going to give to that organization more than the person who didn't actively listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what advice would you give to fundraisers that want to start integrating AI more actively into their operations, but might feel overwhelmed, a bit scared, uncertain?
Yeah. Spend the $20 and buy one, whatever one you choose. Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, I think are the three that make the most sense. That's step one. I would not recommend Claude because it doesn't have a memory like ChatGPT and Gemini do. So probably ChatGPT or Gemini. Memory is unbelievably important. Otherwise, you have to say the same thing over and over. And then sit down and teach it to write like you do. Or write like your organization does, or both, right? Some hybrid between you and your organization. So
that can be uploading historic documents. That can be.
You can upload previous email communications. I mean, whatever you need to do.
Templates, as you said.
Yep. So upload templates, upload historical documents, historical solicitation, whatever you need to do, and teach it to learn you. And then, so that's the step one, most important thing that I think anybody can do. And then the second thing is help it project manage your life, right? Say it's Q1 right now. I have 3 events. I have to do 14 meetings this month. Here are the donors. Here are their giving levels. How should I do my calendar? It'll tell you. It'll tell you a really sophisticated, and you could even say, here's my commute. Here's my office hours. Here are my standing meetings. Populate the whole thing. It'll project manage with you. And when I say with you, not for you, because you have to provide it with a lot of the content, right? So it's with you.
Right.
So I would help it project manage with you, and I would teach it how to write like you in your organization. Those are the first 2 steps. And I would spend the $20 a month. And if you don't have $20 a month, go in on it with a colleague. Have multiple logins. Use the same thing. If you work for the same organization, you both spend $10 a month. You can use the same login, especially if you're not using it for personal use.
Great.
That's my recommendation.
And when you're talking about using this as a professional, you might be a person in one department. How do you think about cross-department collaboration, getting IT and analytics and frontline fundraisers and all these different folks to collaborate using AI? What does that look like? I don't know if there's a way to talk about that.
And the one that I didn't bring up that I'm now kicking myself because it's the one I use most in the work context is Copilot, right? So if you have Microsoft products in your organization, Copilot's usually built into it. Copilot is more of a really robust, and the reason I'm bringing up Copilot is to address your question. Say you're an organization that has 10 years worth of annual reports somewhere in a database, probably in Microsoft OneDrive, potentially.
Right.
You can use Copilot to talk to it. Hey, research the last 10 years of annual reports and pull out our programmatic numbers year over year. And it'll just list every year programmatic numbers. You didn't have to go through and do that. So I think showing value in your organization, and if you're a Google organization, you probably have Gemini and AI, Google Assistant as part of it. So I think showing value, say, how did you do that so fast?
Oh,
That's the first question. The first question that everybody asks.
yeah.
How did you do that so fast?
Yeah.
Right. It's always so fast.
That's a great
Yeah.
marketing slogan for some of these AI companies, like how did
Yeah.
you do that?
Yeah.
Well, I use Claude, or
Yep.
I use,
Yeah. Whatever. So I think as soon as people ask, how did you do that? Or how did you do that so fast? Or how did you do that? Whatever. Um, this is how I did it. Would you like me to help you learn how to do it? And I think that's really it. I think IT is the hardest barrier because it's all the security, 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 security. So, and I mean, and depending on where you live and what kind of organization you work for, there's a lot of environmental concerns too, for
yeah,
sure. It uses a lot of electricity that's not being used for other things. Um, but if you don't say thank you to it, then you could lessen the amount of electricity you use, for example. But IT is always going to be the hardest because IT has such a high bar for security,
yeah,
and these things they're just not secure. And that's why Google Assistant and Microsoft Copilot, which are built into things that you're already using, might actually be the first step into showing value to it for your organization. Because as soon as somebody asks you, how did you do that? Well, I use Microsoft Copilot. What's Microsoft Copilot? This is what it is. And then you just kind of do that. And then you can kind of branch into the other tools that we talked about earlier.
What a huge advantage, though, to be younger and to have the knowledge, I guess, the experience of using AI
Mm-hmm.
previously, and to start creating value for your organization.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been much harder in years past to demonstrate your value
Yeah,
as a nobody,
totally.
right?
Totally.
And I say nobody fondly, but it would take you a long time to get to the point where you could stand in front of the CEO and um, present an idea or present
Mm-hmm.
something that was meaningful. And now you uncover something important, it's gonna give you an audience right away. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Yeah. And I
that.
think the pushback generally is going to be from people that fear that you're using it in either an unethical way. So using the
Jump
donor
in.
data.
Tell me about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, one of the fears is definitely, oh, you're just giving away all of our data, all of our trade secrets, the way that we do things. And now somebody else is going to be able to replicate it. I've never heard of that happening, but that's a fear. And that fear is not going to go away because it's new, right? And you fear what you don't understand. So
Well said.
that's one of the pieces. The second piece is, why do I even have you on the team? I'll just learn how to use this and I can just let you go because obviously this is doing your job for you, right? So that's why it's a partner. And I think we're going to see this in higher education and K through 12, high school especially. I think the next, again, 3 to 5 years, the differentiator for a high school senior applying to a college is going to be how they leveraged it as opposed to how they used it, right? Because there's still something to be said about going through the very hard process of critical thinking. And I think you have to demonstrate that you're a critical thinker and that you leverage this to make your product faster, better, more personalized, whatever. And that you're not just using it to do your job, because if you use it to do your job, you will get replaced by it.
Hmm.
So you have to really think about it as a leverage tool, right?
That's
It's a fulcrum, might you say,
Hmm.
like a lever.
Wow. Wait. Yes. Bonus points to anyone throw in a fulcrum reference on a Chris Looney
And
podcast.
that was not planned for anybody listening to this. That was
I don't
not
know.
planned. I just
Prove
came
it.
up with it.
Prove it.
I looked at his little pin
Pin.
there, and I was like, oh, well, that's a good
Leverage,
reference.
fulcrum. Yeah. Thank you. That's awesome. So do you have any ethical concerns personally?
The environmental concerns are a little alarming. I mean, if you have somebody creating trash, whatever videos and stuff that they're just playing, right? I think when people use it as a play tool, the amount of electricity, I mean, they're literally going to build like a nuclear power plant to run these, like for sure,
Yeah.
because the chips take so much. So I think
It's
And
no
there's
joke.
only so
Like
much.
I've
It's no
definitely
joke.
heard of
It's no joke.
places
Yeah.
in, I think it might have been in Georgia, Tennessee, or somewhere where it's the size of Manhattan, the
Yeah,
power
totally.
plant.
Yeah. So environmental concerns first and foremost. Unless somebody hacks it, I'm not super worried about the ethical concerns. But I mean, we'll see. Maybe in 5 years we'll all be
Yeah.
duped, you know, and
Right. I
everybody's
mean,
information's everywhere.
donor information obviously is probably privacy issues.
Of course.
Those are legitimate concerns, right? So I think
Yeah,
we have
they're
a
legitimate
ethical
concerns.
responsibility to do whatever we can to protect our donors,
Yeah.
or just the general public, the information that they've entrusted to us or that we've
Exactly.
been able to secure. So I see that for sure, right? And
Yeah.
but again, in some ways, like you can't protect everything if there are bad actors, right? It's not that we've
Totally.
done something wrong, it's that there are bad actors who have
Exactly.
taken advantage of weak systems
Exactly.
or vulnerabilities, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And I
yeah,
think if since a hallmark of doing PhD research is anonymizing the data. That's like 101, especially and I did research on children. You can't let children's information go into your papers, right?
that's it.
So it's like automatic for me to think about anonymizing data. And I think the more people can think like my first step is to provide no personal information to this
Yeah,
period, right?
I love
You
that.
can put donor A gave $50,000 on October 27th to
Thank you.
this program.
Yep.
But yeah.
Thank you for saying that. And it's easy to not
Yeah.
anonymize when you're thinking about, oh, I'm just going to upload an Excel
Whatever.
spreadsheet
Yep.
and have it run numbers, right? Well, the minute you do that, you've not anonymized, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
thank you. I think that's an important point to highlight. And as we look ahead, so as we
Mhm.
kind of near the end of the conversation, we always kind of think, what's next? What's on the horizon? What are the trends? What are the capabilities? What do you predict? What do you see in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit. I mean, I think one thing is that it's going to get good enough where it's going to be more or less indistinguishable when you're receiving a phone call, a voicemail, an email, a letter in the mail. It's going to be indistinguishable that a person did it or an AI did it. And I think it's going to be accepted. So I think people are going to think the expectations for quality are going to increase dramatically.
Yep.
Why would you ever have an error if you have an AI helping you, right? So I think the expectations are going to increase from a donor perspective, the expectations around stewardship, because you can make it more personal now and you have access to all of my information. So why did you forget that I gave, $75 to this thing over here when I mostly give to this, right? Like there's going to be an expectation that everything's more personalized. I think that there's going to be a time where all of your work is more or less done using it, where it's a companion. So there's this agentic agents, agentic tools that are now popping up all over the place. Um, we might even get to the point where almost every email that we send is to each other is going to be drafted by AI first. And we might even get to the point where we're almost not typing anything in to any email. So it's just going to be AIs talking to each other essentially, which on one hand is going to be nice because how hard is it for you and I to figure out how to schedule this, right? That takes time.
Yeah. No, it was easy for us, but we know that there are
Yes,
painful back and forth conversations that happen, maybe 10, 15 emails, just trying to get a group of five, no less
exactly.
25 people together for
Yeah.
a meeting, right?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the pain that we have with communication right now is going to go away, which is going to just make the profession better. I think because this is happening and coinciding with the great wealth transfer, the greatest wealth transfer in human history, I think nonprofits are going to see a lot more money coming to them if they're using this in the most robust way. I mean, we still have to do the work of the mission, right? To do the programming. We're not on the programming side. on the fundraising side, we need to figure out how to maximize the programming, and all this money's coming to us in the next like 20, 25 years. And these tools are out now. So I think, again, if you're not using these tools, you're going to be behind. And in 5 years, if you don't at least have, I mean, I can't imagine in 5 years, most people in the fundraising profession not using this in a meaningful way. Like I would be shocked, because they'll go out of business. They won't have a job anymore.
Right. So the warning or the advice is embrace it, get to know it. Don't be the one that is left behind, right? Be the one that's accelerated exponentially with their capabilities.
Yeah, it's like the personal computer in 1997. That's where we're at. We're in 1997 right now, right? And there's probably going to be a bubble. There's going to be an AI bubble, like there was a .com bubble, because people are making just crap with it. But you got to use, like, you can't handwrite everything anymore. Right. But again, like we said previously, the high touch, the other thing we're going to see is high touch. The value of high touch is going to increase exponentially. The value of a handwritten thank you note is going to go up. Right now, it's really highly valuable, I think. It's going to even be more highly valuable in 5 years. So get ready for, and that's the fun part of the job, right? The fun part of the job is talking to people.
100%. Being in relationship, doing life together, right? And
exactly.
It's just interesting to think about the fact that we're going to have companions that are
in our pockets.
Are artificial, as well as companions that are your pet, your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, friend, colleague. So it's just, I think it's an interesting mind shift to embrace the idea of having a different type of companion. And if you can get your head around that, you'll probably thrive in this new age of fundraising that will still be very personal.
Very personal. More personal.
More personal, but more technologically advanced as well.
Yes.
Geez, Duane, thank you for being such a force for good. Thank you for being such an expert in the space and sharing your time and knowledge with the audience. You've been a teacher and mentor, I know, for a long time, and you shared that very well with us today, and know that your impact on the industry has been and will continue to be extraordinary. So thank you for being the leader you are. And unfortunately, though, that concludes today's conversation. We welcome you to like this podcast, share it with others. There's also a Lead for Good podcast, Nonprofit Edge podcast that I invite you all to find, like, and share. But thank you again to Duane. Thank you again to all of you for plugging in. Again, this has been Mastering Fundraising, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for joining this episode of Mastering Fundraising. We hope the conversation was helpful and invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast for more conversations with extraordinary nonprofit and fundraising leaders. To learn more about Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership, please visit us on the web at fulcrumleader.com. To learn more about the 5-Tool Fundraiser, please visit us at 5toolfundraiser.com. We want to hear from you. Please share your thoughts and ideas with us at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Thank you for the important work you do to make our world stronger. We look forward to welcoming you back during a future podcast. In the meantime, take care and be well.